The wind came howling down from the mountains, dragging with it the scent of pine, old smoke, and something far worse, blood. Colt McRae narrowed his eyes against the bite of cold as he led his mule through the snow-laced timberline, boots crunching across frozen earth. A fresh kill, 2 rabbits strung over his shoulder, steam still rising from their pelts. The late winter had been cruel, the kind that didn't just chill bone, but memory too. But today, the world felt heavier than usual. Off somehow, like the forest had stopped breathing. That's when he saw it, a blood trail slicing across the crusted snow like a red scar, leading straight to his cabin door. He dropped the rabbits. Hand went to his holster. His cabin, a squat structure of dark logs and stubborn nails, stood silent beneath the trees. No smoke from the chimney. No prints in the snow besides the drag marks, like something had been crawling. Or dying. Colt stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Boots silent. Eyes scanning for movement. He found the body slumped beside the woodpile. Not dead. Not yet. She was young, no more than 25, with matted hair the color of chestnuts and a torn riding cloak clinging to her frame. Her cheek was split, bruises blooming across her jaw and throat. Her hands were bound with rawhide, wrists rubbed raw. A boot was missing, her ankle twisted, and God help him, she was beautiful, even ruined. He knelt, fingers brushing her neck. Pulse, slow but steady. Her eyes fluttered open, just enough to find his. "Don't let them find me," she whispered. Then her head lolled and she was gone again. Colt looked back at the trail behind her. No sign of horses now. But that much blood? Someone would come looking. Hell, half the damn county could probably follow that trail. He sighed long and low. Damn it. He lifted her. She barely weighed more than his coat. Inside, the fire had long died out. He tossed logs on, sparked the kindling with flint and steel. As warmth crept back into the room, he laid her gently on his cot, cutting the rawhide from her wrists. She flinched even in unconsciousness. Scars. Old ones. Across her ribs, her arms, like she'd worn shackles before. Colt washed the blood from her face, poured whiskey on her ankle, and wrapped it tight. Her eyes blinked open once, glossy and fevered. Colt. He froze. She knew his name. He hadn't heard it spoken in over a year. Not since the day they banished him from Iron Hollow. Not since the deputy died. Not since the lies spread quicker than fire in a dry barn. "Who told you that name?" he asked. But she was asleep again, breathing shallow. She looked younger with her eyes closed. Like someone he once knew. Someone he'd buried. He pulled a blanket over her and sat in a chair across the room, watching the fire. Watching the door. At some point, he fell asleep with his rifle across his lap. It was the sound of hooves that woke him. He was out the door in 2 breaths, staying in the shadows, hidden beneath the overhang of the cabin. 3 riders moved through the trees beyond the clearing, quiet, tense, dressed in settler gear. One of them dismounted and walked the perimeter, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. Colt raised the rifle. Didn't fire. Not yet. The rider crouched beside the blood trail and cursed. "She made it this far." "She won't make it farther," said another. "Preacher said dead or alive. You know what he prefers." They moved on, disappearing back into the trees, and Colt exhaled for the first time in minutes. Dead or alive? She hadn't lied. Back inside, the fire cracked and hissed. She stirred beneath the blanket, fever high now. He boiled snow water and forced it between her lips. "Don't let them find me," she whispered again. He leaned closer. "Why do you know my name?" Her lips trembled. "You don't remember me." She passed out again before she could finish. Colt ran a hand down his face. It didn't matter who she was. Someone was hunting her. Someone with power. Settlers with guns didn't just come this far into the mountain for fun. He looked around the cabin. It was barely fit for one person. Drafts in the corners. Creaky floor. 1 bed. 1 chair. 1 door. Not a fortress. Not by a long stretch. He grabbed his tools and started to reinforce the windows. Nailed boards across the inside. Laid bare traps just beyond the porch. Dug a shallow pit near the firewood stack. Something from the war, quick, cruel, and hidden. The snow fell harder by afternoon, wind pressing in like a closing hand. By dusk, she was awake again, sitting up, teeth chattering. She stared at him like someone looking at a ghost. "You're Colt McRae." He didn't respond. "You served with my sister," she said. Her name was Sarah. That name nearly broke him. Sarah Beaumont, the nurse with fire-red hair and a laugh that never faded even after the worst raids. She died on a stormy night when everything went to hell, and Colt had carried her body from a burning field hospital under gunfire. "You're Clara," he said softly, the puzzle sliding into place. "She had a picture of you. You were just a kid." Clara nodded. "I was." Then they came. She told him, halting, with long silences and trembling hands. She joined a preacher's convoy headed west, looking for hope. What she found instead was a false prophet with a silver tongue and a thirst for control. Jedediah Grant. He preached purity, obedience, and discipline. But behind closed doors, he hurt women, locked girls in sheds, whipped them for disobedience, branded them as witches. She escaped, barely. The others never did. "They'll kill me if they find me," she said, "because I know what he's done, and because I ran." Colt stood silently by the fire, jaw tight. The crackle of flame filled the space between them. Finally, he said, "Then we make sure they don't find you." She looked up. "Why? You don't even know me." "I knew your sister," he said. "She died trying to save men who didn't deserve it. I won't let her little sister die the same way." Clara's eyes welled. She looked away. Night settled in thick and cold. Outside, the forest creaked under snow. Colt stayed by the fire, rifle across his lap, boots still on. Clara dozed, then whispered something in her sleep. He leaned in to hear. "Colt, I dreamed they found us." He didn't sleep that night. When dawn painted the cabin walls with gray light, the sound of distant dogs echoed through the trees. They were coming again, and this time they weren't going to miss the trail. Colt stood slowly and walked to the fireplace. He pulled an old cavalry saber down from above the mantel and laid it next to his rifle. Then he looked back at Clara. "If they want blood," he muttered, "they're going to find more than they bargained for." And outside, the wind carried the faint scent of smoke. The light broke through the clouds like a blade through cloth, casting silver streaks across the snow. Colt watched from the ridge above his cabin, spyglass in hand, tracking the movement below. For riders now. And dogs. They were sweeping the slope like a search party hunting a fugitive, or prey. Which, to them, probably wasn't much different. They'd be at the cabin by sundown. He tucked the spyglass into his coat, jaw clenched. Beneath the trees, the world had turned too quiet. Like the forest, held its breath. When he stepped back inside, Clara was awake, sitting up in bed, blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her eyes met his without flinching. "They're getting closer," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded. 4 of them. Maybe more further back. She inhaled slow, bracing herself. "Then we don't have much time." Colt poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one, and sat across from her. For a while neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with words that hadn't yet found their place. Finally, Clara broke it. "You really don't remember me, do you?" Colt studied her carefully. "I remember a little girl with 2 braids and a crooked smile who couldn't stop following her sister around. That was you." Her lips curved into something like a smile. "That girl died a long time ago." He didn't ask what replaced her. She took a slow sip of coffee. "Sarah used to write me letters from the field. Said you were the only man in her company who didn't smell like whiskey and regret. She said you had a good heart. A broken one, but still good." He looked away. "Your sister was too kind." "She was right," Clara said softly. "You could have left me there. Should have, maybe. But you didn't." "I don't leave people to die," Colt muttered. "Not anymore." A beat passed. He stood and began sorting ammunition from a tin box near the hearth. "Tell me everything you know. About them. The preacher. Where they might be headed. What they want." Clara pulled the blanket tighter and stared into the fire like it held ghosts. "Jedediah Grant," she said. "He wears a white coat like a judge, carries a Bible like a shield, and speaks with the voice of honeyed poison. He's not just a preacher. He's a parasite. Gathers desperate people, promises them heaven, then builds a kingdom out of their obedience, especially the women. Colt didn't interrupt. He branded us, said we were wicked, said the mark would remind us to obey God's will. He kept the young ones near, used religion like a rope, told the men we were temptations, told the women we were unclean, made them believe it. Her voice didn't break. That made it worse. I spoke up when I saw him sneaking into the other girls' quarters. He tried to drown me. When I fought back, he called me a witch, said I cast devils into the camp. She lifted her sleeve and showed Colt the faint, puckered scar on her forearm, shaped like a crescent moon and cross, burned in with a red-hot iron. He told the others I was cursed, said if they didn't kill me, I'd bring ruin to us all. Colt didn't move for a moment. Then he reached for the bottle near the hearth, took a long pull, and set it down without a word. Clara looked him in the eye. He'll come for me himself next time. Colt loaded a shell into his revolver and snapped the chamber closed. Let him. She tilted her head. You planning to kill a preacher? I've killed worse. And what do you do when the whole town turns on you again? Last time they thought you killed a deputy. This time they'll say you murdered a man of God. I didn't kill that deputy, he said flatly. I know, she replied. Sarah told me the truth. Colt stared at her, firelight flickering in his dark eyes. Why'd you come this way, Clara? Of all the directions you could have run, why toward a ghost like me? She held his gaze. Because ghosts don't lie. And because I figured if anyone knew what it's like to be hunted by your own kind, it'd be you. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then Colt stood and grabbed his coat. Come on. Where? Out back. You need to learn how to shoot. She blinked. I already know how. Good. Then you'll learn how to shoot my way. Behind the cabin, the trees opened to a narrow clearing lined with broken bottles, rusted tin cans, and a makeshift dummy made of hay and old cavalry jackets. He handed her a carbine. Winchester. Heavy but clean. Reliable. Clara squared her shoulders, cocked the rifle, and fired 3 quick rounds. 2 missed. 1 hit the bottle, barely. Colt raised a brow. Rusty. She glared. Let's see you do better. He took the rifle and, with a casual flick of his wrist, shattered 3 cans in a row, one-handed. Then he passed it back. Again, he said. And again. They trained until her fingers ached and the light began to dim behind the ridge. She was better than she let on, steady stance, good instincts. Colt didn't say it aloud, but he was impressed. At last, Clara lowered the rifle. Her breath came in clouds. Why'd you go up against the law back in Iron Hollow? Colt hesitated, then gave her the truth. Because the deputy killed a boy in cold blood. Claimed it was a mistake. Town covered it up. I didn't. What did you do? Buried the boy. Gave his mother the badge. He looked away. Then they ran me out before the sheriff could hang me. Clara nodded slowly. So you already know what it's like to be hated for doing what's right. I didn't do it for justice, he said. I did it because I was tired of pretending I wasn't a bastard. Clara tilted her head. Maybe you were. Maybe you're not anymore. He stared at her, then cracked the barest hint of a smile. Don't get soft on me now. She grinned. I already think your beans are inedible. How much lower can my opinion go? That night, they cooked in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, but because the silence felt earned, like something had shifted. As the moon rose, Colt placed an extra log on the fire and checked the traps outside one more time. When he returned, Clara was asleep in the chair, rifle cradled in her arms. She looked peaceful for the first time since she'd arrived. He watched her a moment, then draped a blanket over her shoulders. As he turned to head back to the door, a soft knock rattled the wood. Once, twice, then silence. Colt froze. No one knocked this far out. He drew his revolver and stepped quietly to the door. Outside, only moonlight. Then the voice came, smooth, deep, and soaked in southern piety. Brother McRae, I do hope you're awake. I believe you've been keeping someone that belongs to us. Colt's blood turned to ice. Clara stirred behind him, eyes opening, voice trembling. "That's him," she whispered. "That's Jedediah Grant." Colt's grip tightened on the revolver. The preacher was here. And he wasn't alone. The knock had been polite, the voice even more so. But Colt knew damn well that Jedediah Grant hadn't come up that mountain to negotiate. He stepped back from the door, silent as breath. Clara was already on her feet, wrapped in the blanket, rifle in hand, eyes wide and locked on him. No fear, just steady awareness. Like she'd crossed this line before and knew what came next. "Out the back," Colt whispered. She hesitated. He nodded once. The trap trail. Low and fast. She was gone without another word. Colt turned back to the door. The preacher knocked again, this time a little firmer. "You've had time to think it over, son. She's a danger. We can cleanse her soul, if she returns willing. Don't let the devil lie to you. She can still be saved." Colt smiled grimly and eased the door open just a crack. And there he stood, Jedediah Grant, tall as myth, with snow resting lightly on the shoulders of his white duster. He wore no hat, no scarf, just a holy man's composure and a Colt Navy revolver at his hip. Ironic, that. 2 other men flanked him, rough settler types. Armed, alert. The dog stayed back in the tree line, quiet but quivering. "You're trespassing," Colt said coolly. Grant's smile didn't fade. "I bring the word, Mr. McRae. The law of man bows to the law of God." Colt stepped fully into the doorway, revolver in hand, not raised. "Yet. God's not the one you're working for." The preacher's brow furrowed slightly, as if mildly insulted. "I gave you a chance apiece," he said, the southern syrup rising in his voice. "You've made your choice." Grant turned, whistled once, sharp. The forest answered with hoofbeats. 6 more riders appeared through the fog, armed, lanterns swinging. They were fanning out. By the time Colt fired the first shot, he was already moving. He ducked left, squeezed the trigger once, cracked a man's shoulder open, and slammed the cabin door behind him. Bullets splintered the logs. Smoke, shouts, curses. The dogs went wild. Colt bolted through the back, heart hammering. His traps would hold for only so long. Clara was already crouched by the ridge, laying cover fire like a trained scout. Her first shot took down one of the dogs. The second knocked a lantern from a rider's hand, setting his coat alight. They sprinted for the creek. The trail was narrow, marked only by broken branches and instinct. Colt ducked just as a bullet clipped a pine trunk inches from his head. "This wasn't the plan," Clara shouted over the wind. Colt laughed, sharp, wild. They never stick to plans. They made it to the ridge, breath ragged. Down below lay the gulch, narrow, rocky, and full of deadfall from a last storm. Colt had built it for this very reason, a natural trap. Clara slid behind a boulder, reloaded. "They're not stopping." "They won't," Colt said. "Not until one of us is in the ground." She looked at him. "Then let's make sure it's them." The battle that followed didn't last long, but it left its mark. Colt used his old war tricks, tripwires strung with broken glass, a buried black powder charge hidden beneath snow and pine. When Grant's riders charged the gulch, they didn't expect the earth to bite back. One went down screaming, his leg caught in a spring jaw trap. Another's horse stumbled and crushed him under its weight. Fire lit the edge of the ravine, casting mad shadows. Still, Grant pressed forward. He was relentless, shouting scripture over gunfire, each verse like a curse. Colt took 2 slugs, one through the shoulder, another grazing his ribs. But he didn't fall. Clara, steady as a thundercloud, took aim at the preacher's horse. The shot rang out clean. The animal shrieked, reared, and bucked Jedediah Grant into the mud. He hit hard, lost his weapon. Colt limped toward him through the haze and ash, revolver pointed straight at the fallen man's chest. "End of the road, preacher." Grant spat blood, face twisted. "You'll burn for this." Colt cocked the hammer. "Already am." But Clara's voice rang out. "Don't." He turned. She was behind him, rifle lowered. "We bring him back," she said. "Let the town see what he is." Colt's hand trembled. The temptation was a stone in his gut. "He branded you," he growled. "And killing him makes us what?" she said, eyes gleaming. "Like them?" "Like him." The wind howled around them. Grant groaned and tried to sit up. Colt exhaled, slow, like letting go of a ghost. He lowered the gun. They bound Grant's hands with the preacher's own belt and rode back toward Iron Hollow at dawn, dragging him behind a mule like old Justice come home. When they reached the edge of town, the streets fell silent. Clara rode in front, scarred but unflinching. Colt followed, bloody and half-limping, but unbowed. Behind them, Grant sagged against his bindings, face sallow in the rising light. The sheriff met them outside the saloon, flanked by townsfolk who stared like they'd seen phantoms. "We found your preacher," Colt called out. "Turns out he's been skipping the parts of the Bible about not hurting women." Gasps, murmurs. Someone crossed themselves. Clara dismounted, stepped forward, and held up the journal she'd taken from Grant's saddlebag. She opened it to the first page, filled with notes, codes, names. At the bottom, one name stood out, underlined. Sarah Beaumont. "He hurt my sister," Clara said. "And he hurt me." The sheriff hesitated, but the crowd did not. They surged forward, voices rising, accusations flying. Colt stepped between Clara and the mob, just in case. But they weren't after her. They were after him. Jedediah Grant had built a kingdom of fear, and now it crumbled. Later, in the quiet of the jailhouse, Colt sat on the porch with a fresh bandage over his ribs and a cup of strong coffee cooling in his hand. Clara sat beside him, gaze fixed on the horizon. "You could have shot him," she said softly. "Why didn't you?" He stared into the distance. "Maybe I finally got tired of burying people." She gave him a long look. "You buried a lot." He nodded once. "Too many. Most of them good." She reached over, took his hand. Didn't say anything more. For a long time, they just sat there. Two broken souls wrapped in the thin silence of morning. Then, far off, a bell rang. Not for war. Not for death. Just the day beginning. And for the first time in years, Colt didn't flinch at the sound. The sun spilled gold over Iron Hollow's dusty Main Street, lighting up the cracks in every boardwalk, every shuttered window, every corner folks tried to forget. Colt McRae stood beneath the awning of the jailhouse, hat tilted low, arms crossed. The preacher, tied and gagged, sat slumped in the holding cell behind him. For a man who'd preached fire and brimstone, Jedediah Grant now looked like a heap of damp ash. Outside, a crowd had gathered, murmuring like thunderclouds. Colt scanned the faces. Some he recognized, most he didn't. They were younger now. New settlers, fresh hope. But the old scars of the town still pulsed underneath. He could feel it. Clara stepped out of the saloon, journal in hand, her steps measured and sure. The sun caught her hair, wild and wind-burnished, and for a heartbeat, she looked like Sarah. She stopped beside Colt and faced the crowd. "My name is Clara Beaumont. This journal contains the words of a man who pretended to save souls while breaking them. He branded me. He beat other girls. He murdered 3 women during the crossing and buried them beneath the mountain path. And he almost got away with it because no one thought to question him." The silence deepened. One woman near the front covered her mouth, tears streaming. "He said my niece ran off to California." Clara held her gaze. "I'm sorry." He lied. The crowd shifted, like a collective breath, held too long. Colt stepped forward. "You all remember me. I didn't leave Iron Hollow by choice. I left because I stood against a lawman who murdered a boy. And none of you stopped him. You let the lies stick to me because it was easier than facing the truth." The sheriff, an older man now, gray at the temples, looked down, shame burning his face. "But I didn't come back for revenge," Colt continued. "I came back because someone needed help. And I'd rather die with that blood on my hands than live clean while others suffer." The townspeople were quiet, their shame settling like silt. Then a voice rose from the back, quivering but strong. "I knew Sarah. She brought medicine to my mother during the typhoid." All heads turned to an old miner, leaning on a cane. "If her sister says this is truth, then I'll stake my soul on it." Another voice chimed in. "I saw that mark on my own daughter. She wouldn't speak of it, but I see now." The crowd shifted. Anger turned direction, no longer toward Colt or Clara, but inward, toward the rot they'd allowed to grow in their midst. A moment later, Jedediah Grant was dragged into the street, wrist shackled. Not by Colt, not by the sheriff, but by the very townsfolk who once would have protected him. He stumbled through the dust, mouth spitting curses behind the gag. Clara met his eyes. This town forgot what justice looked like. You reminded them. They took him to the gallows. No trial, just evidence, pain, and a reckoning long overdue. Clara didn't watch him hang. She turned before the lever dropped. Instead, she found Colt waiting outside the stable, saddling his horse, quiet and distant as ever. "You're leaving," she said. He paused. "Always planned to. Before or after saving me? Didn't have a plan for that." She looked at the trail beyond town. Then at him. "You could stay." He shook his head. "This place don't forget easy. Not really." "But I do," she said. "Or at least I choose to." Colt met her gaze. The firelight in her was real. She'd been hunted, beaten, almost buried, and still she stood taller than anyone in that town. "You're stronger than she ever was," he said quietly. Clara nodded. "And I'm not afraid anymore." Neither was he, not entirely. He mounted his horse, the saddle creaking beneath him. "What do you do now?" she asked. He smiled just a little. "Keep riding. Towns like these don't run out of trouble." She stepped closer, took his hand for a long moment. "Then promise me one thing." "What's that?" "When someone else knocks on your door, bleeding, lost, and broken, open it." His voice came softer now. "I already did." Then he tipped his hat, and with a nudge, the horse turned. The dust rose behind him like smoke from a long-dead fire. Clara watched him go until he vanished beyond the ridge. Back in town, someone rang the old church bell. Not for a wedding, not for mourning, just to remind them it still worked. And in the hearts of those who stayed behind, something long buried stirred awake. Honor, maybe. Or memory. Or the echo of a man who once walked out of a war into exile and came back carrying justice like a rifle across his shoulders. Some say Iron Hollow never forgot what happened that week. But most agree they finally remembered who Colt McRae really was. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.